Welcome back to the Carpenter Critique. I'm your host, Luke Carpenter. If you have not been here before, welcome. If this is your second time back, welcome back. And if you're a repeat listener, bitch, here we go again. Well, I'm so glad to have you here. We are on episode, I keep losing track of the number. I think it's 16, which is crazy if it is, because that means 4 months of Carpenter Critique. Hello? Week 16? That's awesome. I honestly didn't know I would get this far, so I'm proud of myself. I have not given up on this project. I've seen it through. I'm going to keep seeing it through for a little while at least. Everybody's like, no, please, stop having a podcast. Please, stop posting. No, girl, I'm here to stay. I want to see myself get 20 followers. I think I'm at 18, which I feel like 20, golden number. I'm excited to see how this channel grows. I'm so sorry for the watchers. Like, I know I just showered. I'm about to go into the pool, so I didn't really want to do my hair. I actually never know how to do my hair. My hair is this awkward length right now where I want it to get longer, so I'm growing it out. But it's not quite as long as I want it to be, so I still have no idea what to do with it. And then it's also not short, so I can't just, like, do nothing. My ideal hairstyle is just I wake up and do nothing. I feel like that's mainly men's preference, but I just don't, I hate, what am I supposed to do? Someone tell me what I'm supposed to do with my hair. I have no clue. I just look in the mirror and I'm like, swish, swish, bish, and then that's it. That's like all I do. And then I go on my day. That's why I need a hairstyle that just like looks good naturally. I was gonna get a blow dryer and I was gonna get all these little supplies basically to help with my hair. But I have a move coming up. So I know that anything I buy right now, I'm just going to have to move. So I don't want to do that. But I've got a list. So don't you worry. My hair is going to, in a couple weeks, my hair is going to be looking shiny, looking fresh, looking brand new. And then you guys can switch to watching instead of just listening. But I know you guys are listening right now just because you don't want to look at my hair. And I understand that. I totally get that. But I'll fix that for you. I will. I know this is also a visual medium. So I'll fix that for you. Okay, enough about my hair. I've already spent like 30 minutes on it today, and then I just decided to shower, and I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna have it messed with. Okay, moving on. All right, well, if this is your first time at the Carpenter Critique, basically the whole thing is I match a movie or a new TV show with a research psychology article, and I try to see how psychology can inform how we watch the movie or the television show, and how art can inform what's happening in psychology or within people. So I think they're very easily compared and contrasted, and we can totally look through the lens of one to see the other more clearly. This week, I'm so excited. We're going to be doing Obsession, the movie Obsession, and then also the art of obsession. So psychologically, what does obsessing over something mean? Like, what's happening to your brain when you're obsessing over something? So very, very fun. If you haven't seen Obsession yet, are you living under a rock? Have you not seen what's going on social media? Well, if not, let me break it down for you. So the big story right now is that the budget was under $1 million. For those who aren't really familiar with movies or indie filmmaking, most movies take above, I'd say $10 million is seen as a low budget movie. And so the fact that this movie was made for under $1 million is amazing. That includes like all the special effects, paying all the actors, paying the arts department. Especially with a horror movie, you'll see a lot of these new indie movies coming out are a lot less budget filled. So it's like nearly impossible to make, a sci-fi movie under $10 million. So like I said, it took under $1 million to make this movie. And Obsession has made over $379.5 million at the global box office. So their tiny production budget was just $750,000 to $1 million, around that. And they have almost 400 times their budget, which is insane. Also, a phenomenon happening is the female star, Indy Neveretti, is blowing up right now. So she had, I think, under 10,000 Instagram followers when she started, or around that. And now she has 2.2 million followers on Instagram and across different social medias. So she is blowing up as well for her performance. All of the stars are having a big kind of influx to their career, which is really great. The directors from YouTube, which a lot of horror movies are going to start seeing, A lot of these horror movie directors are from YouTube. So I know the Backrooms director is from YouTube. The people who directed Talk to Me and Bring Her Back are from YouTube as well. So YouTube is starting to become this medium for film directors. Before they get their start, it's YouTube is where they're starting. Just some interesting things going on in the film world. Also, what this is telling studios and executives at studios is that you don't need massive amounts of money in order to make art and good art that people want to see, which is also interesting to see where maybe horror is going. Also, this Obsession is an original idea. This is from the director. This is a very original script. He used to do like comedy skits on YouTube, and he used to do comedy skits with the guy. There's four main characters. Okay, so the four main characters in Obsession are Sarah Harper, Nikki Freeman, Bear, and Ian. So Ian has worked with the director, Curry Barker, multiple times, and they're kind of partners in crime. Ian is very funny. His real name is Cooper Tomlinson, but for those who don't know where they know Bear from, the lead guy, Bear was on Teen Wolf. His name is Michael Johnston. Super cutie, but he's really fun. I really like him. And the chemistry between the two leads was really, really solid. Of course, the standout performance is easily the Nikki performance by Indy Neverready. I mean, my gosh, she was so good. And let me give you a background of the plot of Obsession, just in case you haven't seen it. Basically, it takes place at this small town. There's four late teenagers, early 20-year-olds, young adults that work at a video store. And they have just more of a complex emotional relationships. So Bear has a crush on Nikki. Nikki is fooled around with Ian. And then Sarah kind of likes Bear. But so they're just kind of like young adults having emotions, having feelings for people, you know, all that stuff. Bear and Ian are really close friends, and Nikki and Sarah are kind of close friends. But one night, Bear is giving Nikki a ride home after their trivia night, and he has bought her a present, which is basically this little rattle he got from, I don't want to say like a tarot store, but like one of those kind of kooky dooky stores where you can find one of these, like, it's like you have Make-A-Wish thing, and you can just break it and you make a wish. So Bear was going to give it to her, and then he was going to confess his feelings for her as he got her this gift. Especially because she just put in her 2 weeks for work, so their dynamic is going to change for sure. She gives him the opportunity to express his feelings for her, and he turns it down. He says, no, absolutely not. She goes inside, and he uses the wish on himself, and he breaks it and says, I wish Nikki loved me more than anyone else in the world. Immediately, things get weird. So it's an instant shift. In the movie, I felt at home because I know I've lived in a small town before, and the dynamics, like they went to their local dive bar, they have a local trivia night, and then they're going home from that. It's like, oh, I've been here before. This is comfortable. This is fun. As soon as he makes that wish, it gets a little weird, and it stays weird until the very end. It just gets more and more intense, which I really appreciate. You're kind of like uncomfortable. And so it's not as much jump scare. I mean, there are definitely jump scares, and one in particular I'm going to talk about, but there's definitely jump scares throughout, and it is scary, but more than that, it's just unsettling. I would say unsettling is the way you feel for most of the entire movie, because it's really intense, but like awkwardly intense. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. See what I did there? See what I did there? I'm so smart. But anyway, so from then on, Nikki becomes obsessed with Bear, and that's what the whole obsession term, like that's what it all comes down to. And so she's kind of acting weird, but in a way that's like she starts to get more and more in love with him, and the only thing that can satisfy her is just more love from him. More love from him. I need attention. I need love. I need you to be obsessed with me just like I'm obsessed with you. And a really kind of a cool look into Gen Z dating wise. We do have unlimited access to each other now with phones and technology. So we could always be FaceTiming. We could theoretically always be texting, always be around each other. And so there is this type of critique of like, when is too much? And we are obsessed with each other, but like, when is the line? And I love that the director is playing with that throughout the entire film. Also, it's a really interesting dynamic because the protagonist, although we see him as a hero, I think the director does a good job of not framing the protagonist as the hero, but as the villain. So we're following basically the villain of the story the entire time. We never really leave Michael's side, Michael Johnson's side, who's playing Bear. We never shift from Bear's focus until the very end after, well, okay. Spoilers, spoiler alert. If you have not seen Obsession, I'm going to ruin it for you right now. But basically, as the plot goes on, Bear is trying to navigate his relationship with Nikki, how they start dating, obviously, and then this really disrupts the friend group. Apparently, he learns that Nikki and Ian used to hook up occasionally, and then he learns that Sarah really liked him, which makes now obsessive Nikki really jealous. There's a lot of funny sequences of Nikki just being absolutely crazy in, in their bedroom. And Bear's like, "You're acting crazy. Why are you acting crazy?" It's like, hey, because you made a crazy ass wish and it came true. I don't know. It takes him a while to realize that. And at first I was like, why is he not getting it? But I guess he doesn't know he's in a horror movie, right? Like, who would know that their wish that they did actually came true? Even though it was literally right after he made the wish that it started getting freaky. But Freaky Nikki comes out. But yeah, it just keeps going over and over, and it's kind of just builds the entire movie until the absolute climax. After Bear learns that he has to either kill Nikki or kill himself, he decides to kill himself. At the very, very end of the movie, Nikki has already murdered their friends in obsessive fits about Bear, and she is basically, at the very end, it's so cool. He takes the pills to kill himself, and then she finds another obsession little wish thing and cracks it and wishes for Bear to be obsessed with her. And so there's a sweet moment at the very end when Bear is obsessed with Nikki and Nikki is obsessed with Bear, and the obsessive lovers get to be together, kind of Romeo and Juliet-y. And then Bear dies, therefore ending the curse, ending his curse and her curse, and Nikki is free. And Nikki wakes up to this bloodshed, that Bear is dead, Ian is dead, she's covered in her own blood. There's a mutilated body in the corner. By the way, body serving tea. That's right, body, Megan Lawless playing Sarah, body tea. You know you did that. And Nikki realizes that she's all alone and covered in blood, and so she's screaming, "Indy Never Ready, you killed that. Indy Never Ready, you killed that." Oh my gosh. Everybody's saying that she's the Oscar contender, and I would agree. I think it's between her and maybe Emily Blunt from Disclosure Day. I've seen Disclosure Day like 3 times, and I've fallen asleep every single time in the theater. But Emily Blunt, I know, is eating, and I know she does a really good job, but I just don't know how the movie ends, and I'm like, why? Why don't I know how the movie ends? And I could just go see it again, but it's 2.5 hours long, and I honestly didn't like that much. Whatever. This isn't about Disclosure Day. But I really like the way Obsession is just critiquing. I think it's a definitely modern day horror. It's about modern day Gen Z, a bunch of different Gen Z people. So it's a very young adult. It's got a very female protagonist, a very good point of view. The director isn't like mincing words. He's like, what this boy did is wrong. To this girl, she loses her mind basically, and what he did and wished against her is wrong. And he keeps reminding us that our hero, our protagonist, is in the wrong, which I really, really enjoy. I didn't see that the first time I watched it, but I've seen Obsession 3 times in the theater now. That's right, I'm helping the global box office boost it up. But yeah, it was very, very good. I would give Obsession 9 out of 10. It was amazing. Yeah, and I think the performances were so strong. Even though the budget was so low, though you can tell, because there's not really that many filming locations, and basically the entire film takes place inside different houses or a video store. But what they did was it was all these original ideas from scratch. I mean, there's definitely influences from other horror films, but I was a very big fan. I'm definitely an Obsession fan. There's rumors now about an Obsession 2, which I'm totally into. I think the creative arts department did a really great job with, they had a dead cat and like making the sandwich look crazy because Nikki makes a sandwich out of the dead cat. Of course, not good, but it is a horror movie, so. And the blood and stuff looks really real. It's a very creative approach to horror, and I'm excited to see what Corey Barker does next. Definitely a director to watch. I think Indy Never Ready is a performer to watch. She's probably going to be in so many different things. This press tour that they've done is crazy. I just keep seeing more clips of them doing press now because I don't think any of them anticipated that it was going to blow up. Also, what's crazy is that the lead girl, whose performance everybody is praising, She did Obsession, and then she just had to stream on Twitch because she wasn't booking any roles. She's gonna get some bookings now. I bet she better be ready. I want to see her in everything. She was so good. And she's so cute. I'm obsessed with her. I really like her. So yes, if you haven't seen Obsession yet, I think you absolutely should. I am going to dive into the research article and see how it can inform how we look and see obsession. So let's dive right into that. For this week, I picked the article titled Neuroscience of Obsession, Why Your Brain Won't Let Go. So this article talks about obsession from a neuroscience perspective rather than treating it as simply a personality trait or a lack of willpower. Its central argument is that obsessive thinking develops because the brain creates highly reinforced neural circuits that repeatedly direct attention toward the same thoughts, memories, or fears. The author also emphasizes that these circuits can be changed through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new pathways over time. So the main thesis is that obsession is not who you are, it is what your brain has learned to do. Through repeated experiences involving strong emotion, uncertainty, stress, or trauma, the brain creates shortcuts that make certain thoughts increasingly automatic. Once those pathways become dominant, the brain repeatedly returns to them even when they are no longer helpful. So, lots that we're going to take from this, of course. I also want to plug the author. There is also audio available, but this is Dr. Sydney Ceruto. She has a PhD in neuroscience, and she is also an author. There's a book called The Dopamine Code, which I think she gets a lot of where this research is coming from is from that book, The Dopamine Code. But anyway, diving into the articles, the brain's attention system can become stuck is what we're talking about when we're talking about obsession. So normally your brain decides what deserves attention, what can be ignored, what is important enough to remember. The process relies heavily on the salience network, is what we call that network in the brain that decides what's important to remember, which acts like a filter for importance. When functioning normally, important events receive the attention. Unimportant events or unimportant thoughts will fade away. Now, during obsession, the salience network incorrectly labels ordinary thoughts as highly significant. So the brain repeatedly returns to those thoughts because it believes that they require immediate attention. For example, if you're waiting on a text message from someone, a healthy brain thinks, well, they haven't really answered yet, so I'm just going to leave it alone. An obsessive brain thinks, something is wrong. Did I ruin everything? Why aren't they responding again? I need to check again. Nothing external has changed. The brain has simply assigned excessive importance to the uncertainty. So part of our brain is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, a little background on that, is normally the thing that helps people regulate their emotions. It helps them shift attention to different things. It helps them think logically and stop repetitive thinking. Under chronic stress or anxiety, the emotional brain becomes way more active than the prefrontal cortex region of the brain. And so the PFC becomes way less effective. This explains if you're telling yourself, just stop thinking about it, stop thinking about it. That rarely works because your logical brain knows that the thought is unnecessary, but your emotional circuits continue signaling that the issue is urgent. It's like, this is urgent, but that might be your emotional brain talking, not your prefrontal cortex. So dopamine really drives the search. It's not the satisfaction. One of the article's most interesting points is its discussion of dopamine. Many people believe dopamine is the pleasure chemical. The author argues it's more accurately involved in wanting, seeking, anticipating, and searching. This means that dopamine spikes before receiving a reward rather than after. So for some people, dopamine is all about the anticipation, is what this is saying. Examples include waiting for a crush to text, refreshing an email for a job offer, checking social media constantly, or replaying an argument over and over in your head. Uncertainty creates anticipation. And so if anticipation creates that dopamine, then this creates an obsessive loop. So uncertainty will lead to dopamine, which will lead to checking and refreshing, which will lead to temporary relief. But then that temporary relief leads right back into uncertainty, and that uncertainty leads right back into dopamine. And so, although it's the pleasure chemical and you're getting happy from it, it is this stress plus happiness loop in your brain that, especially with high anticipation or high anxiety, this could be really rewarding. It seems really rewarding to refresh, but it's not good. And it's just continuing the obsession over and over again. So this is called the obsessive loop. So stress makes obsession even worse for those who haven't felt a lot of stress during obsessive times, I can't speak for myself, of course, because I frequently get obsessed with things, and I feel like if I'm stressed, that's all the more reason I'm probably going to dive into a TV show and, like, not stop until I'm absolutely finished. I definitely watched Game of Thrones when I was in an obsessive loop, and sure, I finished it in about 3 weeks. It's 8 seasons long. That's about almost 80 hours of television. It's probably around more like 70, 75 hours of television, but still maybe too much to watch in 3 weeks. But whatever, I'd keep going. We can, and, keep on trucking on. But this article emphasizes that stress does not necessarily create obsession. It just makes obsession worse. Instead, stress weakens the brain ability to regulate itself. So under chronic stress, the emotional center becomes more reactive than active. Attention becomes narrower and more focused, and repetitive thinking increases, flexible thinking decreases. This is why many people notice obsessive thinking during grief, breakups, trauma, major life transitions, or extreme pressure under work. Stress reduces mental flexibility, making it harder to disengage from recurring thoughts. So yes, like we said, if we're stressing about something, it means it's on our mind a lot, and it means our mental flexibility, which is like our ability to think about plenty of different things and process plenty of different emotions, is tightened. So a lot of the things we're thinking about hones in onto a few specific things, and normally it's those things that we're stressed about. I think this is interesting because obviously not everybody's brain works the same, but a lot of these reactions are very human. So obsession is a very human thing to deal with. And while I'm talking about this, I would encourage you to think about how you feel when you're obsessed with something, or maybe how your obsessions can be triggered by stress. What are you obsessed with? How do you think you can help your process? We're going to get to it too. But trauma can wire obsession into memory. So the author explains that traumatic experiences teach the brain, this happened once, it could happen again. As a result, memories replay frequently in our head. The brain stays on alert, and the intrusive thoughts become a lot more common. The brain mistakenly treats past danger as present danger. From a survival perspective, this is seen as adaptive. But when it persists after the danger has passed on, it can become maladaptive and maintain obsessive thinking. So a lot of this can lead into something like post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. If we're obsessed with an event that happened to us, or if we can't think about other things, we start to think that that past danger is now present danger. A lot of things lead into worse things. So these are just basically the stepping stones of things that could lead to worse. So there is a healthy versus unhealthy obsession, of course. The article distinguishes between productive passion and harmful obsession. So a healthy obsession is characterized by curiosity, passion, creativity, sustained motivation, and enjoyment. Examples include athletes, musicians, entrepreneurs, scientists. These individuals become deeply engaged, but eventually feel satisfied and can eventually disengage with what they're doing. Unhealthy obsession is characterized by rumination, constant checking, fear, reassurance seeking, and the inability to let go. Instead of serving personal growth, the thoughts begin to control the individual. A key distinction is the presence of a closure signal, which is healthy pursuits eventually feel complete, while unhealthy obsessions never seem fully resolved, so the brain keeps returning to them. Obsession is learned through repetition. The article's biggest theme is that the brain strengthens whatever it repeatedly practices. For example, every time someone checks their phone, every time they seek reassurance, every time you replay a conversation, every time you Google the symptoms of something, or every time you mentally review a mistake that you made, they reinforce this neural pathway that is associated with that behavior. So this reflects the principle that neurons that fire together wire together. Repeated behaviors become increasingly automatic over time. Like repetition, if you're repeating it over and over and over again, you're going to start having this become a behavior. And it's like practice makes perfect, but in a bad way. And it becomes these bad habits. And so we don't want to practice makes perfect the bad way. It's good to keep in mind, like, practice makes perfect, and I want to do the good things, make the healthy habits. Of course, easier said than done, right? But that's just breaking down what the article's saying. So why does suppressing thoughts not work? The article explains there's this rebound effect. Trying to force yourself to not think about something often has the opposite effect because the brain first must identify the thought in order to suppress it. So it's like I'm thinking about it by trying not to think about it. And I'm like, don't think about that. I'm thinking about it. A classic example is like, don't think about that pink elephant. Well, then you're going to start thinking about that pink elephant. You know what I mean? And similarly, it's like, don't think about my ex. Just don't think about my ex. I'm going to start thinking about your ex if you just brought that up. Instead of suppression, the author recommends redirecting attention towards meaningful alternatives. So let's talk about neuroplasticity and how the brain changes. The article ends on an optimistic note by focusing on neuroplasticity. The brain changes through repeated experiences. According to the author, reducing obsessive thinking involves practicing emotional regulation, gradually facing uncertainty, redirecting attention rather than suppressing thoughts, repeatedly choosing healthier responses rather than falling into unhealthy habits, and allowing the nervous system to experience safety. Over time, new neural pathways become stronger while the old obsessive pathways become less dominant. The article stresses that this process is gradual rather than immediate. Of course, it takes time to train your brain, and it takes time to really sit with your brain and try to make it feel safe, or just reminding yourself that you're in a safe environment. And so, at least for me, I know my brain can relax when I can tell myself over and over that I'm in a safe environment. If I'm practicing emotional regulation, I know there's some stuff that is going to make me do some wild shit. If I have a few drinks, I'm probably going to be up a while. Or if I have coffee a little bit later, which I know this isn't for everyone, this is just for me, but coffee a little bit later, I know I'm gonna be wilding out till 3 a.m. There's things you get to know about your body and your brain. If you need 8 hours of sleep that night, hey, maybe a monster at 6 p.m. is not the way to go. However, some key takeaways: obsession is a learned brain pattern, not a personality flaw. The salience network in your brain can mistakenly label certain thoughts as critically important. The prefrontal cortex struggles to regulate obsessive thinking during the periods of stress. Dopamine fuels anticipation and seeking behavior, and help explains why uncertainty is so compelling. Stress and trauma make obsessive loops more likely by reinforcing emotional learning. Healthy passion involves eventual satisfaction. Unhealthy obsession lacks a sense of closure. Repeated checking, rumination, and reassurance seeking strengthen obsessive neural pathways. So those really strengthen the bad ways we don't want our brain to train. And then through neuroplasticity, consistent practice of healthier patterns can weaken obsessive circuits over time. That's a lot of big words. But basically, through redirecting our attention to other things within our brain, this is a consistent practice of a healthy pattern. We can train our brain to think differently. Now let's turn this into obsession. So when love becomes a neural trap, this is the neuroscience of obsession. So let's look at Bear. It starts with Bear's brain being a little bit more obsessive. So a brain that can't let go. At first glance, Bear seems like the sympathetic character. He's shy, he's lonely, he's loved Nikki for years, he's afraid rejection will destroy their friendship. But the neuroscience article that we just read helps us understand that Bear's feelings stopped being healthy, it stopped being a healthy affection long before he made the wish. His brain assigned Nikki an enormous salience. So the article explains that the brain salience network decides what deserves our attention. So normally it filters information so we can move on with our lives. Bear's brain no longer does that. Everything seems to revolve around Nikki. Every interaction that they have, every smile, every possibility. Now, this isn't inherently wrong. I wouldn't say this is a wrong thing. He just has a crush. This is what a crush is. At first, it starts out as a crush. His brain incorrectly labeled Nikki as the single most important thing in his world. This explains why Bear never develops emotionally beyond her. Rather than creating multiple meaningful relationships, hobbies, or sources of identity, his brain narrows until Nikki becomes his entire emotional reward system. Bear embodies the modern nice guy, whose loneliness and emotional dependence becomes entitlement rather than vulnerability. Dopamine doesn't want love, it wants possibility. So one of the article's strongest points, like we talked about, is that dopamine isn't really about the pleasure, it's about the pursuit. It's about the wanting, the seeking, the anticipation of it all. That perfectly explains Bear before the wish. So for years he lives inside this possibility of, what if she likes me? Or what if tonight is the night I finally tell her? Or what if I finally talk to her about my love for her? Ironically, the uncertainty itself keeps his obsession alive. Instead of processing his feelings by asking Nikki out or accepting whatever answer she gives, he remains suspended in this anticipation. The unresolved state continuously reinforces the obsessive neural pathway. So he likes this what if they, or what if they won't they? And even in the car, she asks him straight up, do you like me? And he's like, no. Bear. You've liked her for years. What are you talking about? So this wish becomes a shortcut. Instead of tolerating the uncertainty, Bear eliminates it entirely. The movie suggests that this is exactly what makes his choice so horrifying. He chooses certainty over consent. Nikki becomes obsession personified. So once the wish takes effect, the film flips the neuroscience on its lead. Bear no longer represents the obsession. Nikki does. She calls constantly. She watches him sleep. She panics whenever he's away. She becomes violent whenever she believes she is losing him. She literally cannot emotionally regulate separation. The neuroscience article describes unhealthy obsession as lacking a closure signal. The brain never feels finished, so it keeps checking, clinging, and seeking reassurance. This is exactly the type of possession that Nikki becomes. Her love is never satisfied. No amount of affection is enough. Every reassurance only creates the need for another. The supernatural curse externalizes the compulsory checking, the reassurance seeking, and the inability to disengage that psychologists often observe in obsessive thinking. So Nikki completely loses her prefrontal cortex. The article explains that under intense emotional activation, the prefrontal cortex, or the PFC, part of the brain is responsible for judgment and self-control. This becomes way less effective for Nikki as the film goes on. What's striking is that both protagonists experience this loss differently. Bear loses his PFC because he refuses to confront reality. Even after realizing that the wish has gone catastrophically wrong and that the real Nikki is suffering, he repeatedly delays undoing it because this fantasy still fulfills his emotional needs. Oh, Bear! What the fuck, Bear? And then Nikki, once possessed, loses her PFC entirely. Her obsessive devotion overrides every normal social boundary until violence becomes an extension of her attachment. She cannot redirect her attention, regulate her emotions, or tolerate distance, an exaggerated and horror version of what obsessive neural loops can look like. The real monster isn't the curse, as of course we're seeing now. Perhaps the film's most unsettling message aligns perfectly with the article. The curse didn't invent Bear's obsession, it amplified it. Bear had already built years of neural reinforcement, constant rumination, idealizing Nikki, avoiding vulnerability, depending on one person for emotional fulfillment, and refusing the uncertainty aspect of what if she doesn't like me. The supernatural wish simply removed the last obstacle. In neuroscience terms, the film asks a chilling question. What if every obsessive thought your brain rehearsed suddenly became reality? The horror isn't that Nikki loves Bear too much. The horror is that Bear believed love could ever be created by eliminating another person's choice. The Mind Lab argues that obsession isn't simply loving someone too much. It's a pattern of neural learning in which attention, dopamine, and emotional reinforcement become trapped in a self-perpetuating cycle. Obsession dramatizes that process through supernatural horror. Bear represents the brain before obsession reaches its endpoint, a person who mistakes fixation for love and certainty for intimacy. Nikki's cursed transformation represents the endpoint of that same cycle. Love stripped of autonomy, boundaries, and regulation until it becomes all-consuming. By turning psychological mechanisms into literal horror, obsession suggests that the scariest monsters aren't demons or cursed objects. They're the destructive patterns our own brains can create when desire is reinforced without acceptance, uncertainty, or genuine connection. That is all I have for you today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I am so glad to have you on this journey with me. Please go see Obsession and also check out this Mind Lab article. Both very intriguing, both thought-provoking, and honestly, if you haven't seen Obsession yet, you are living under a rock! Go see it. It's probably going to win an Oscar, I think, this year. And yeah, come watch the Carpenter Critique. If you want to follow me on any social media, I am at the Carpenter Critique on all social media platforms. Please subscribe to the YouTube and also follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much and have a great week. I'll see you next week. Bye.